As simple as somebody getting into the attic and falling into a bedroom because they don't know there is no floors and so on.
Oh
and we
God.
had cases like this, especially at the final walkthrough. The attics are insulated and you cannot see where you step.
Right.
If you know where to step, if you know how the system, how everything is built, you will find those areas to step, not to damage anything.
So today I have Dennis with me, who is my preferred inspector. We're going to cover a few of the interesting inspection topics. Why would you say doing an inspection when you buy a property is important?
Basically, every single week we find some stuff that might be hidden. There is always areas inside the house that you cannot access at the showings when you're coming to see first time the house. In most cases, it's going to be attics, crawl spaces, which especially when you have a house, you definitely want to check what's going on in the crawl space, because in 98%, most of the crawl spaces, they are awful because nobody knows how to take care of them. When you get out of the crawl space, you just tell people like, I wouldn't stay on this floor, so you just get out.
When you do an inspection, you as a professional can access the areas that I as a realtor or my buyers might not have access to when we do our first showing. So the reason number one to do the inspection is because you actually can go into detail on these systems components and parts of the home that you're buying, right? Is there any other reason?
The second one is only because I'm not planning to buy the house. I'm not here to see just the good things. I'm actually coming to find stuff. I'm not here to see if this is a beautiful design. I'm here to actually see this stuff that's wrong, that's bad, and so on. Sometimes people call me, you are the bad guy. And I would say, yeah, probably I'm the bad guy for the sellers, and I'm the good guy for the actual buyer. But at the same time, the seller, next day is gonna be a buyer. So they will look up for an inspector who is gonna find the bad things and so on.
So the second reason that I'm hearing is because you are kind of like a third party who does not care about that particular house necessarily, and you're there just to find everything what's wrong with it.
Yes, it might sound weird when you say I don't care about the property.
But you're not gonna live there.
But I'm not here to see the beauty of the property.
Yeah,
even if it's everything painted, everything is new, replaced, and so on, I'm gonna look for those small, big hiccups that I can find in there to let the buyer know about what's going on with the house on the day of inspection. Why do I need an inspection if you're just going through the things that I can check myself? The point is that the home inspector will know always more about how all the system and components are working. There are things that you don't even know that you better don't touch it because this is not safe. There are different areas that even I wouldn't get in. If I see that something is going on over there, I would definitely, first of all, suggest to get a professional to get access it safely. There are multiple things. There are as simple as somebody getting into the attic and falling into a bedroom because they don't know there is no floors and so on. And we had cases like this, especially at the final walkthrough. The attics are insulated and you cannot see where you step.
Right.
If you know where to step, if you know how the system, how everything is built, you will find those areas to step, not to damage anything. But this is what sometimes happens.
Is there a scenario in which you would say an inspection is not necessary?
If, for example, you are purchasing a property, let's call a condo, and you've done this before, not only once, and you're buying a condo that, let's call it in a bad shape. You're planning to basically remodel everything, and you say that you don't need an inspection, I will say, yeah, you can go like that. If you get a licensed, qualified contractor who can do all this stuff properly from the very beginning, you can still call an inspector and do an inspection after the works were done, just to make sure that everything is functioning the way it should be. A home inspector is not necessarily obliged to use different tools to check some stuff that's hidden. I personally, and I know many others who will use an infrared camera to see if there are any hidden leaks or something like this. Moisture meters that will actually show or point out to areas that have more moisture than it's normal in different conditions. So it's good sometimes to go beyond the actual minimum that you can see visually and so on.
As an inspector, what do you have to look at a home? I for a fact know there are some rules that govern how you do the inspection, right? So there's bare minimum that you have to check. So what is the bare minimum and what is something you do on top of it that is just the quality of the service you provide?
So basically, because in Illinois, a home inspector is supposed to be licensed in order to work in this field, because there are guys who can work without a license and nobody knows, nobody asks, nobody checks. Actually, in in my entire career, probably nobody asked me about
Nobody
license.
asked for a license.
Yeah. Still, I put my license everywhere, in the agreement, in the report, and so on, so you can always double check. But this is the first thing you should check. Not everyone has a license, sometimes. There are minimum rules that you have to check in the house. I will give you a couple examples so you understand how everything works. So basically, there are a lot of inspectors that will do the minimum. They will do a quick inspection. If you check in a house and you have a roof, the minimum you have to check is basically from the ground.
You don't even need to go on the roof.
It's all about safety, liability, and stuff like that. If you have the access, I mean, it's good to check it. Obviously, there are 2 floors, 3 floors. Sometimes there are roofs that you cannot visually see it from the ground. I'm probably one of those inspectors who will try always to climb the roof. If there is no access, we can use drones. We can use long poles with a camera on top and make a couple pictures to see what's going on. There is always a way to see a roof. I would say most of the inspectors have to go beyond the minimum scope of inspection and inspect more, because this is what differentiates us from the actual inspectors that are doing the minimum, bare minimum. We will provide more information, more pictures, videos if we need, and so on.
Do you have any special tools that you use when you do the inspection, or is it all just like visual with your eyes?
Yeah, that's one of the things about the minimum. This is a visual inspection. Basically, we cannot break the walls, we cannot damage walls or dismantle something to go inside. So I have a bunch of tools, as you've seen before. I have a vest like a police officer, and I have all my tools on me. I have moisture meters, I have infrared cameras, I have a lot of different testers for outlets, for electrical, and obviously we cannot see through the walls, but an infrared camera and properly using it can show you in many cases if something is wrong. And moisture meter. Moisture meter is the main tool any home inspector should have, because there are a lot of areas that might have moisture under the actual flooring, walls, ceilings, that probably we don't see with naked eye, but there are areas that are commonly checked. For example, I personally check every single toilet, floors around the toilet. Even if it's dry, I will use my moisture meter before going forward. I will check around to make sure there are no hidden leaks from the wax ring, which is cheap, $8-10 wax ring, but can create
a lot of damage,
yeah.
And it can be a hidden damage for a long time.
But in reality, you don't have to check all of this if it's not visually, accessible. You don't see any stains and so on. But most of us try to go beyond the actual minimum, just to provide more service to the client, just to make sure that we sleep well at night, our client will sleep well, and our realtor will sleep well.
One thing I will note is that if you're doing your own research and trying to find your own inspector, I think it's very important to be super detailed in the questions you ask them to vet them. Let's say that inspector is offering a super cheap price. Find out what is included in that very cheap price, right? Is he going to just come, take a look at everything and be like, everything's good? Or are they actually going to go above and beyond what's required by just law and actually do service to you?
Even if you don't want to go with the realtor's inspector, do your research. Call a couple inspectors in the area of the house. Try to find out what are the rates, but don't actually look at the rates in the first place, because if it's very cheap, if you call 3-4 inspectors and all of them have kind of the same rates for the same house, and there is one that's going to do like $100-200 cheaper, that's a question mark sometimes. The inspector could be in the beginning of his career, he might not be so experienced and so on, which is not necessarily bad. There are good guys who in the beginning of the career will know even more than many others, right? But there are a lot of inspectors that are doing part-time sometimes, and for them price is not important, they will do it cheaper. But first of all, ask the inspector. It's not about what it's included, because basically every single inspector should include the same things. But ask them how long it's going to take the inspection. If it's a single family house, sometimes it's not going to be an hour and a half. It's going to be 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. It all depends on the size of the house. I have a good example today. I mean, the clients, they expected me to do the inspection in 45 minutes. And when they saw that I'm taking longer, they just left to work. The point is that I explained them, if an inspector is coming and doing to a townhouse or a single family house an inspection in 45 minutes or 1 hour, I apologize, but that's not an inspection. You need time to inspect the attic, exterior, interior, every single bathroom, every single bedroom. Everything takes time. Sometimes, if the house is in a good shape, it goes faster. If the house is not so well maintained and so on, there are things that have to be checked, double checked, triple check. You need to connect the dots from exterior to interior, and you need time to think. You cannot inspect and do this in 1 hour. And at the same time, you can ask the inspector to send you example, let's say, of a report that he does and so on. Ask the inspector how he works. Basically, does he include pictures, videos? I try to explain with pictures and add a 20, 30, 40 seconds video to give more details on whatever I'm trying to explain in written form or in a picture. So everyone works different. You cannot find all the inspectors working the same. But if an inspector is working with just one picture and then just marks everything, nowadays I consider myself that we are in an era with technology and we can offer more than the minimum is required by law. But again, if you ask me, are they doing right at doing the minimum? I would say yes, because they're not supposed to do more, basically.
What would you say are the main differences between inspecting a single-family house and a condo?
The size and number of system and components. Because when we inspect condos, most of the time the condo includes just the condo itself inside, because we have a bigger building, everything on exterior, common areas and so on, roofs, siding, is covered by association because association is taking care of that. In most cases, most of the inspectors, they will visually observe the house to make sure there is nothing critical that will pop out even with the house. If there is something, we will note in the report, so at least you can address it to the association. And another difference is that in many condominiums, the main shutoffs like water, electrical, gas, they are somewhere in the common area. Sometimes they are not accessible. Even if you have an AC condenser, they might be on the roof that cannot be accessed. So the only difference in between the single family house and the condo is that we have to inspect less systems and components. And that's why actually this is the only inspection that I would say can take up to an hour. If somebody will do a very small condo in half hour, that's good, because you can manage to do this in half hour. But we're talking about townhouses, single family houses. There are different sizes. That's why it takes more time for a house to inspect rather than for a condo.
When the buyer is there for the inspector is doing his job and, for instance, points out something that is wrong with plumbing or the furnace, and then the buyer asks the question, can you tell me how much it's going to cost to repair? Can you actually give somebody an idea of how much it can cost to repair, or is this something where they need to call an additional
That's a very good question, actually, because this is one of the most common things and mistakes when a buyer is hiring an inspector. They expect that inspector will come, will actually inspect the house, and then will give them how much it's going to cost to fix everything. We cannot know how much it's going to cost us, because every single deficiency, every single house, townhouse, condo, and the particular defect that we found will be different in cost in terms of repairs. Because a professional, first of all, they won't tell you the cost. Even if you ask them over the phone, they will say, I need to see it, I need to evaluate it in order to tell you, because sometimes we see small, but there might be other things that have to be adjusted or fixed that will add to the price and stuff like that. I would say home inspectors, they shouldn't give quotes or something. They can give quotes in case they have a trade. For example, they have a plumbing license, or they are general contractors and they are working in this field and so on. They might say, how much would it cost if I, for example, my company would fix it, even though we cannot fix for you anything for 12 months, I guess, if we inspect. So we cannot do other services to you in case we inspected the house, we found the issues. I cannot come back the next day and do the same job and fix these issues.
Okay.
Yeah, there are some limitations about this. So basically, why we don't like to tell you the quotes, the prices, because you're gonna call 3 different contractors, licensed ones in this trade, in this field, and they will tell you 3 different prices, because every single company has its own price range that they're working to fix something. In order to find out how much something is going to cost, you can definitely use pictures and videos from the report, at least to try to find a rough estimate about this. This is something that's going to help you out, but still, when the contractor is going to come on site, then he can tell you for sure how much it's going to cost to fix something.
If I'm hearing this right, the best way to deal with it would be to take the inspection report and then maybe send it to the general contractor or a handyman and ask them for a proper quote, right?
There are things that can be fixed by a handyman, yes. Most of the time we will suggest to go with a licensed professional in the field and so on, because I see on a daily basis, I see stuff that was done by somebody, and sometimes you're inspecting and you're thinking like, this probably wasn't done by an electrician or a licensed plumber. because you know they won't do this. If it's a licensed contractor, they will know the rules and regulations. We don't operate the wording codes, but they will know the codes of that village, city. And the home inspector won't know all the codes of every single village, every single city, but we are following the general rules of inspection. So basically, in order to find out if something and how much it's going to cost to be fixed, it's good to call a plumber from that area or an electrician who knows the actual regulation of this particular village or this particular city.
Do not expect your inspector to actually quote you on any repairs.
And I can tell you the second thing, which is probably the first question that none of the inspectors like, would you buy this house? This is one of the most common. I would say I hate this question, but now it's not already hate. You hate it in the beginning, but then you just expect it. And you try to explain as nice as possible to the client that I wouldn't buy this house, only because I'm not looking for a house.
I'm not looking for a house.
We are there to show you the condition of the house on the day of the inspection. Then you receive a full detailed report. In my case, it's going to be a very long one with pictures and videos, so you can get a better decision on going forward or not. But I cannot answer the question if I would buy this house. So don't ask the inspector if they would buy it. Don't even ask your brother, sister, mother, because you are the one who is buying the house. You're supposed to like it.
Sometimes you see a house with a sauna or a pool or like solar panels on the roof. Do you inspect those things?
Every single house has a certain amount of system of components that are always installed to every house. But there are things like pools, saunas, like solar panels and so on that actually a home inspector won't inspect them only because we are not qualified to inspect those. If we get the particular topic, pools, in states like Florida, in states like California, where every second house has a pool, most of the home inspectors, they will get a second license, or maybe not even license, but at least they need to be certified to inspect the pools because they are very common over there. In Illinois, they're not so common. And over here, I always suggest to everyone, whenever you purchase a house and you get an inspector, don't expect the inspector to inspect the pools because we're not qualified to inspect. Only if he got an extra certification for this. But most of us, we don't have this certification, and we always direct these pools to professional who will inspect it, and then maybe the same professional will actually take care of your pool over time.
Can you tell me about the expectations that a buyer should have when they hire you to do an inspection, and maybe some of the misconceptions that you see buyers commonly have as well?
I would say any buyer who is purchasing a house and is ordering an inspection should expect from the inspector to do a full, thorough inspection in terms of checking every single corner, even though it's a visual inspection. I'm that guy who will try to touch, open, close, start, stop, every single area that I have access to. If the house is not vacant, if it's occupied and there is furniture, we will have a lot of limitations in terms of we won't see all the walls and floors and probably won't have access to outlets and stuff like that. That's why I always put a ton of pictures from the inside of the house, general pictures in the report to show how the furniture is placed. So when you have the final walkthrough, when they remove all the furniture, you can make a comparison. Maybe there is a hole in the wall, maybe there is something else. You should first of all expect from the inspector a thorough inspection. I would say in general, not a 1 hour, I call it 1 hour inspection. It doesn't really happen 1 hour. If you get a general rule of thumb, if you have a 4,000 square foot house, you would say this is a 4-hour job. Probably it's shorter when the inspector gets experienced and so on. It can be 2 hours and a half. For me, general rule is like average 2 hours and a half for a single family house, like a general house, because there are houses of 10,000 square feet that can spend even 7 hours inside the house. The best way is to ask the inspector what he's doing, what type of reports. A lot of inspectors will be more than happy to send a sample of the report, probably from a previous inspection, because this is our advertisement. I have a lot of clients that are calling me over the phone and trying to find out what I'm inspecting, what I'm not inspecting. In most cases, you will send an agreement to a client and he will have to read the agreement. And in the agreement is explained in details what an inspector is doing, what are the limitations, what we can inspect, what we cannot. I can tell you 95% of people, they don't read the agreement, then they come to the inspection and they realize that there are a lot of things that, for example, a home inspector won't inspect a sauna. And they're like, Will you check that? Or there are people who will come to the inspection and will put the hand on the wall and will ask, what's in this wall? We cannot see through the walls. I had a client like this. It's all about, let's call it psychology, right?
Sure.
We have to deal with people.
Sure.
I mean, there are different people, different skills, by the way. There are a lot of contractors that are coming. Never expect from an inspector to do everything you ask. Don't demand an inspector to do that, to do that, to do that.
As an agent, I often tell my buyers that coming to an inspection is your second opportunity to spend time in the property, because most likely we saw it once for like 15 minutes, then we put an offer, we went on a contract, and a few days after that we're doing the inspection. So that's gonna probably take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, depending on the situation. However, at the same time, I also tell my buyers, hey, if you don't want to spend 3 hours of your life just sitting in this house, you don't need to come for the full inspection. In your opinion, is it helpful when people are in the house for the whole duration of the inspection? Or is it best for them to actually come towards the end?
For example, you are buying the house and you have a husband or a girlfriend. You guys can come to the inspection, just try not to bring the entire family. I understand that you have cousins who probably are general contractors, carpenters, electricians, whatever. Don't bring all, especially kids. The point is, kids are running and screaming all around, but actually you hired an inspector to inspect for you. You want him to concentrate at 100% whatever he does and to look and to see whatever he has to see. And when he's disturbed at every single time, he can miss stuff. We're humans too, we're not robots. I encourage everyone to come to the inspection. For example, there are inspectors that are working with the client, like walking along, right, and explaining everything while walking. I don't prefer this one because I cannot concentrate on the particular area that I'm working, and at the same time, I cannot explain you about something over here if this might be connected with something over there that I still have to check. So basically, I would tell clients, you come at the beginning of the inspection. You have time to walk through the house. Just don't go in the room I'm inspecting, leave me over there, I get out, you just go inside, that's not a problem. You have time to see this, you have time to see how I'm working. When I'm done with everything and I have a full picture of the house, I will come to you and I will spend even 1 hour if it's needed to stay and explain and show and answer questions. There are people that don't need any explanation, and there are people that need to show them even where is the main water shut off, how to replace the filter, and I'm happy to show this.
But you need your time in the beginning
Yes.
to actually do it.
For a matter of fact, there are a lot of inspectors who like to work with the clients along. Most of them, they like to do the full inspection. This way it's gonna go faster. And every single inspector has his own routine that he's doing every single day. So that's why for him it's very difficult to miss something. If you don't disturb us, we don't miss stuff.
Do you recommend that they get an inspection on a new construction home? Because oftentimes I hear people think that if it's new, it means that everything's perfect and no inspection is needed.
Yes, you need an inspection for a new construction. I had lately new constructions that are built so bad. Sometimes older buildings, they look better, have less deficiencies in the report and so on rather than this. But I would still do an inspection. Let's say average is about $450. And you are investing, let's say $500,000-$600,000 in a house. Even if we don't find anything really alarming or something like this, you can sleep well after that.
Right, it's just giving you peace of mind.
Peace of mind. Sometimes I find things that builders shouldn't be missing. You have so many guys who can go and check afterwards. I can give you a very simple example that sometimes we cannot inspect. They have limitations, like you cannot climb the roof, you cannot do this. I had a client who actually closed the property and then he called me for the inspection. Because you still have that 12 months, right, warranty from the builder. And even if you don't do inspection in the beginning of the purchase, it's very important to do at least an 11-month inspection so the builder could fix it before you go on your own. When you come to a new construction and you see electrical that most probably wasn't done by far by an electrician, you realize, I don't know who worked over here, but he wasn't a licensed electrician or somebody. You go on the roof and you see tar on the roof, new vents installed without proper flashing. You see them on old houses, you see on DIY projects, but on new constructions you don't want to see. In the worst scenario for you, in terms of if you pay the amount for the inspection, we can call it the worst. We are not going to find anything alarming, but you're going to have a list of stuff that probably might have to be adjusted or something like this. But in the best scenario for the buyer is if we find stuff that's going to be costly to repair, maybe at this time it doesn't create issues. A small flashing improperly installed on the roof, might not create issues for years. In some day can create a leak. You won't know about that one until you get inside the attic, but that can be thousands to repair. So it's good to spot them in the beginning before they move on.
Sometimes I feel like buyers get this perception when they look at the inspection report. They're like, oh my God, everything is bad and everything needs to be fixed now. And I always try to calm down people and say, hey, like, don't look at it as if everything needs to be fixed tomorrow. Take it as like a guide for the next X years of your home ownership. There will be some things that are more time sensitive, but the rest might wait a year or two, or maybe you just need to monitor them and see if anything changes there.
I tell people all the time, remember one rule. Everything is fixable. It depends how much it's going to cost and how much time you need to do for this. We cannot give costs, how much it for the repairs and so on. But at the same time, we realize there are different people with different levels of importance. For somebody, a simple electrical outlet is going to be critical. And for other people, a failing foundation won't be a problem. They can fix it right away because they have somebody who can fix it.
Or they're getting a good deal on the house.
A good deal, and even if they fix it, they spend the money, they still have a gap. So every single scenario is different. The point is that everything is fixable. Don't get scared. That's why I encourage everyone, come to the inspection. At the end of the inspection, I'll go through the findings, and in the report, you're gonna see a ton of others. There is no perfect house, never was. Even new construction will have a list that has to be corrected, has to be fixed. So that's why don't expect perfect house. Inspector will just show you what's actually not perfect and has to be fixed or adjusted. And there are a lot of things, as you said, that can be fixed in a year, in 2 or 3. And there are a lot of things that probably had to be fixed yesterday. So that's why it's good for you to know.
Awesome, it was great talking to you.
Thank you, thanks for having me today.